to digress, David, because I want to get to the financials here. David, in an attempt to host the show and wrest it away from me, mentioned private equity before. And now we can unite all of these interests, right? So the question of how do you get money when you don't have enough money to own a team, or in this case, an athletics department or a college football program, the answer is private equity. And I just want people who don't speak fluent Samson, who aren't already pre-subscribed to Rich Guy OnlyFans, to understand what private equity even is. So, like, how do you classify that? Like, what is it for dummies?
Okay, give me all the money in your pocket. Give me all the money in your pocket. We're going to combine it with all the money in my pocket. Then we're going to go out and we're going to find something to buy and we're going to own it together. We're going to be partners. I'm going to get a little extra fee because I'm the one finding the investment. I'm the one managing the investment. And then in a certain number of years, I'll give you back what you gave me from your pocket. I'll give you back what you gave me from your pocket. And I'll even give you a percentage more. But I promise you that what I've kept is going to be even bigger than that. That's private equity. You find a lot of people to give you their money and you invest it in stuff and then you give them back their money plus more, but you keep even more of it.
So that is a pretty friendly pitch on behalf of private equity, I would say.
I actually thought it was pretty succinct and clear.
Are you saying you don't get it or you don't agree with it?
I'm saying that the reality, now this is where I interject with my own experience with private equity, coming into media, coming into every Red Lobster, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not exactly as clean as what David has just characterized. And so I want to be also cynical about what actually is going on with the NCAA and private equity.
So private equity, venture capital, those are two, I'm viewing those as separate things.
Yes.
Venture capital is when I say, all right, give me all your money. You give me all your money. Now we're going to go buy a company and we're going to run that company. And we may break it up. We may sell it. We may do whatever we want to do. People should think of the movie Pretty Woman, which maybe is too old a movie. But do people know that movie? Richard Gere?
I think increasingly fewer people
Is
know
that
it.
really true?
You're asking the 68-year-old in the room whether he
Do you think our
remembers?
audience does not know Pretty Woman? Interesting.
I know Pretty Woman.
Oh, you're young, so you know what Richard Gere did for a living and what George Costanza did for him. Do you remember George Costanza's in the movie Pretty Woman?
Oh, no. Maybe I don't know, actually.
Isn't George Costanza a character from Friends? Maybe
Seinfeld.
the actor, Seinfeld. Maybe but is George Costanza the name
Did
of the
they call him George Costanza in Pretty Woman?
I'm trying to figure out, do you mean the
It's
actor?
Jason Alexander,
Okay.
obviously.
Okay, it wasn't a
checking.
weird crossover thing. Got it.
That's
That's
I
worse.
can't
I was
even.
trying to remember if the guy
Where were we?
guy with the weird hair was in it too. Was it?
Block of cheese the size of a car battery.
The bottom line is private equity. It made big news in the last couple of weeks with what the NCAA
Enormous
is doing.
news.
Because now it never occurred to anyone that universities are for profit. And some of you may think they are, and certain departments are, but in general, people don't view them that way.
Well, that's because generally they are not making profits. They're generally losing a certain amount of money that the university, through some mechanism, meets the deficit.
Athletics departments lose money.
Overwhelmingly.
Yes, and they get funded by the university, as John said. Now what we're hearing is there could be private equity funds. That means that we put all our money together and we go to Florida State and say, listen, we've got the best idea in the world. We're going to give you $100 million. In return, we want 10% of the profits of your football team.
Yeah. I will pick up a little on Pablo's skepticism or cynicism here and suggest they're not expecting, nor do they care whether the universities make money. They're not going to get paid back from profits. They're going to get paid back, and they don't care how they'll get paid back because they're only interested in making their money available and getting a return on that money. They don't care how they get the return, and they will structure the deal such that we get our money back with interest no matter what, whether your athletics department is more profitable. Now, the schools are going to present to their board of trustees, we're going to take this money in, and we're going to wisely spend it to hire better coaches, to fund our NILs, get better players. That's going to result in more ticket sales. That's going to result in the boosters being happy and giving us more money. And that's going to result in fans being willing to pay more to sit in the seats. And But anyway,
Yeah, I don't agree at all. That's not what private equity firms do. I think that when you hear it from them, when this actually happens, they're going to demand profitability from these departments because they invest in companies that make profit. And in fact, they could own a percentage of the athletic department or the university's operation where they get a set percentage in return for the money they gave. So they could be a profit participation where if you make $1 of profit, the venture capital firm or the private equity firm gets 10 cents for every dollar.
And if they loan the money to University A and the university bungles it and messes around, you believe they just lose their capital?
No, I believe that there's two things that happen when there's private equity fund, which is why private equity guys are so wealthy. They get not only an annual return based on profitability, they get a guaranteed return that after X years, all the money will be repaid at Y interest rate.
Well, didn't you just make my point for me, which is they don't care. They have a contract that says they get paid back.
I do believe they care because the second piece, the annual profit, that's real money.
But I guess the question is, how good is the plan to improve the finances of these schools such that everybody gets what they want? Right? That's it to me.
It's brilliant because that's the hugest question, Pablo. Because how do you do it? How do you make an athletic department profitable? What do you do?
And look,
cut programs.
You have the public records of schools that have gone from having $60 million athletic budgets to having $180 million athletic budgets. And those have generally not ever meant that they went from making 60 and losing 20 to making 180 and making 40. It usually goes from having a budget of 60, losing 20, having a budget of 180 and losing 30. Mm-hmm. I mean, they have not been particularly well run. Schools take the money, they pay coaches too much, then they give them 8-year guaranteed contracts. I can't remember what Texas A&M owes Jimbo Fisher, but it I think is in the neighborhood of $75 million. So wow, and look at Rutgers. They were losing money before they came into the Big Ten. They now have they now get media rights and payments from the Big Ten that probably double, maybe even triple what they had before. They still don't win, particularly, and they haven't built a new basketball arena, and they're not making money. They're still losing money. So they're clearly they're clearly not a candidate for private equity under that operational model.
They would be only if the return promised it would be like a credit card debt. You could get money from private equity firms if you're willing to give them a 30% return and you've got a cash value of your assets enough that they don't feel like they're left naked, that they can collect on a foreclosure, if you will.
I'm assuming that someone, perhaps the institution itself, will have to guarantee the return.
And I can't wait to read the particulars because that could happen.
So the particulars on why this is now a conversation becomes obvious when you realize, oh, right, this settlement that the NCAA just made with Jeffrey Kessler et al., which we've covered on Pablo Torre Finds Out, this will result in an average of $22 million for the next 10 years for the Power 5 schools. Right. And so you add in the funding of expanded rosters with more scholarships. That's $30 million annually, $300 million per school, thereabouts, over the next decade. And I want to frame this question now, given that backdrop, right? Because you've talked about things that are growing in value very clearly when it comes to the NBA, despite all of the complexities. If private equity is a bunch of rich guys who are like, with these strings attached, I will give you my money. Why is private equity preferable to other sources of money?
It's never preferable. It's only used when you don't have access to any other sources. So I'm sorry to all the private equity people out there, but you are my last choice always. We go to a bank. Frankly, I'd rather go to my Discover card and max it out because private equity people, their money is really expensive. And it's going on with the Oakland A's right now with John Fisher trying to go to Goldman Sachs when their money is always more expensive than JP Morgan's money. Everyone in the industry knows that. But when you need money, when you're desperate for it, that's how loan sharks came into the world. People needed money. So what about all the check cashing stores out there?
So are you suggesting that private equity firms are just fancy loan sharks?
Yes.
The Chico's bail bonds of...
You're going to put me on an island because you have relationships with them, but so do I. Do you disagree?
No.
You just won't say it, which makes me laugh about you.
Uh-huh.
But yes, it's just unreal. You make me out to be this
No,
ogre,
but this
No.
is
but
what
that
you
is what
articulated
private equity is.
is what I want to know, right? So if they're going to private equity, that indicates to you a desperation.
100,000%.
Why is no one else willing to give the money with fewer conditions to these college sports programs?
Because they all lose money.
So-
There's
okay.
I don't understand the business thesis, right? I don't understand.
Yes, this is my question.
How, I mean, this feels to me like, oh, there's a bunch of people over here who think they can use more money to turn their athletic departments into for-profit businesses. So maybe I'll give it to them, but I'll give it to them under the conditions that the university is going to have to reach into their endowment. They're going to shut down the chemistry department. They're going to stop having other
Revenue sports.
non-revenue sports.
See you later, diving.
Yeah. So none of those things seem good to me. And I personally I'm very dubious that the schools that take this money will find it to be anything other than a temporary solve for what they regard as, oh, I don't have enough money to win, right? Florida State has enough money to win. They were undefeated last year. They're mad because they didn't, rightly so. They're quite right to be mad that they're the first undefeated conference champion that did not get selected. But they think that if suddenly they have even more money, they're suddenly going to make all the right decisions about the coaches. It's hard that they're not going to have injuries, that they're going to be able to raise the ticket prices, that they're going. I just don't think it's a business. I don't know how you take a department. I mean, if you can figure that out, gee, I don't know why the PE guys wouldn't go after the business school and say, gee, we'd like to own your business school and we'll run it for profit. It seems
They're not going to run the departments. Part of this is the private equity firms. The athletic departments will still be run by the ADs and by the universities. They're just going to own a percentage of it.
Now, I want to ask, though, about that concept, right? Which is how activist does private equity tend to be when it comes to now you have our money and now you have our advice?
I'll bet you $1 right now that Nelson Peltz does not become an investor in an athletic department. Nelson Peltz, that's a callback to the activist investor with the company that escapes me right now, that they did the whole vote. Oh,
The
my
company,
God.
Disney?
Disney, thank you. I'm telling you, I'm having issues.
Jeez,
I'm having
man.
issues. We started late today.
You
were
got
late.
Nelson Peltz,
Yeah.
but not Disney. Your brain is a rotating wardrobe closet of facts.
It's so bad. Nelson Peltz is someone from an activist standpoint. When he makes investments, he likes to have say.
Power.
He likes the power. It's sort of when boosters give money in the old way in college and say, hey, not only do I want to meet the athletes, but I want to say in who you're recruiting as your next quarterback. Private equity firms, when they give money, there are often rules associated with it. There's mechanisms of control, but it's based on economics. It's based on how much money you're losing. You can't lose X amount or else we're going to step in. But we're not going to tell you that you should sign this quarterback or that quarterback. And I imagine that's what this will be. And I imagine the schools taking this money are going to use it for NIL. They're going to use it for players, which is so stupid because the money just disappears into the ether, and it's hard to turn your company around in that way.
So the question, John, just the question I have is then the ways that you add to a bottom line if you're a college sports program seem simple to me insofar as it's always about TV rights. Beyond that, how much room is there as you understand it? Because they're talking about merchandise, they're talking about hospitality, they're talking about turning these stadiums, I believe, into, and this is the example from Redbird Capital, Jerry Cardinal, I believe, who is saying, look, I've done this with the Cowboys and the Yankees, Legends Hospitality. We're going to get money out of the stadium experience. How much is there? Or is it still just mostly about a super league? Is it like, what's the end of the road here, I guess?
I'm not sure I understand it other than there probably are a small handful of schools that are big enough and will be willing to pay or willing to guarantee that they will pay it back. I mean, the University of Texas actually is a rare example of a school that does make money on their athletics department. So I can see a school like that going, I believe we could supersize this. I don't think they'll turn it into a business. I don't think they'll spin it off, but they already have a P&L. They're a public university. They're actually required to report.
Right.
And they've always been quite proud of being about the only school that not only reports a profit, that profit goes to the academics or other needs of the school. That's an ideal situation. I'm not sure I know of another one. There may be several more. I don't know if Ohio State or Michigan or Alabama or Georgia make money. They would be the ones likely to be in that situation. And I can see.
I think the future's different, John. I think that athletics departments are going to be spun off. I think they're going to have to operate independently. I think that they're all going to have employees. The players will be employees. The players will be unionized. The players will be paid. The athletics departments will be independent entities that will have separate owners because the universities will not want to carry them anymore under any scenario because it's brutal for universities to do so. And I think private equity is the first step in what is the next 10 years of a complete change. And it started with NILs, and then it started with private equity, and the next step is going to be spinoff. You watch.
It's an interesting concept. I have to say, you probably are creative enough business-wise to figure out some way to organize that. I don't see how it works within the confines, particularly of a big academic public institution, that, we're going to spin off our athletic department and somebody's going to manage our team for us. I mean, when you were at baseball, could you imagine if they said, we're going to make college baseball teams minor league teams? So the University of Illinois will be the Chicago White Sox AAA team.
We don't need to. The NFL does it that way, though. The NFL college is minor leagues for the NFL.
Well, we're talking about a potential further formalization, John is alluding to, of like rumors that I have heard where it's like UCLA, guess what? You're now with the Rams. And there's going to be a financial dynamic there that'll be profitable.
That would make them a minor league team.
Yes.
Each team in baseball has its own minor league teams, which it's with its own system. It just means that has the players assigned to organizations at an earlier moment. So instead of players being drafted in the NFL after college, it would be after high school, where you're drafted into an organization and then go younger. Do Messi. Didn't Messi go to some camp in Argentina as a 7-year-old or something and became
something like that? Yes.
Something like. I mean, we could start with kids if we want, and I see a world where that easily happens.
So speaking of doing Messi, I do want a bit of cleanup here, right? So 2022 study found that in 2020, just 18 of 229 D1 schools, their athletic departments were profitable that year. Oregon was number one because Phil Knight made a massive donation. 211 of the 229 were losing money. So the question, I suppose, is how much. This is what's, I guess, fundamentally confusing to me. We're getting to a point where the NCAA is saying, okay, you guys all got to pay more than you did before. And at the same time, private equity is coming in saying, we see the potential for you to make even more money. And so that tells me there's an untapped something there, despite all the money losing, and none of us know exactly what that would be.
I do. It is not spending money on things that lose money. It's cutting your expenses. But why do you think there's layoffs at big companies?
Yeah, it just, and I could be, I understand exactly what you're saying. I could be wrong. I cannot imagine, I'm a North Carolina graduate. I cannot imagine the University of North Carolina going, no tennis team, no track team, no wrestling team, no baseball team. We now are going to spin off our football team, and it's got to make money. I just, as a graduate, it just feels gross to me. It's like, really? You're not committed to the idea that your university, and one of the things you provide is some opportunity for people to excel in athletics. And by the way, as students, you go to the baseball games. We went to lacrosse games. We went, it's part of the university experience. I just can't imagine it becoming so mercantile that it's like, nope, it's now just a money-making operation, our football team down
There'll be
there.
Club sports. Everything you're describing, There'll be club sports. It's very nice it's very beautiful what you're saying. The fact that you like doing that in North Carolina.
And by the way, it also, though, I will tell you that it's not trivial. The Board of Trustees at the University of North Carolina will say, no, you North Carolina cannot make your university. You're going to have to let NC State do it as well, and UNC Wilmington. There are state legislatures that will weigh in and say, no, you're not going to get to do this. So I don't know. I just don't see it moving in that direction. I will admit it's a mess, and you're proposing a commercial solution to it, which is the mess is you're basically going to take the top 32 or 48 schools or something, create a super league where their teams are professional organizations.
With values.
But I just want to be clear about this, right? If you are abiding by the logic of private equity, which is we want to maximize the profitability of the thing we're investing in, the most logical goal is in this super league, pseudo de facto minor league system that we've arrived at.
Why do you think universities renovate their campus stadiums? Just by a show of hands.
Money.
To try to increase revenue inside
Yes.
those stadiums. And the reason why they're trying to increase revenue is they're trying to get more money in order to pay for all the things that don't make money. Eventually, what you learn, especially with private equity help, is you learn that don't take your profit to try to support things that are sick. Cut off the dead weight and then continue on with what makes your money.
Yeah. I'll add what I think will be a non-trivial issue. I would not want to be the private equity firm that had to stare down the graduates and the students at the University of Texas for forcing the school to quit, to stop all their other sporting programs. I don't think that's trivial. I think the legislatures of those schools would have problems. That's a massive PR problem. There cannot be enough money in an athletic department to make that massive PR headache.
We'll find out.
Well, it certainly begs the question of like, who can prevent this from happening, right? Is it going to be a legislative issue? Is it going to be a university board of trustees issue? Does the NCAA have any teeth in this decision making? Because it's logical that it's going this way.
Go to Jersey right now with Rutgers. We talked about Rutgers. They spend a lot of money buttressing Rutgers. They easily could say, you know what? We're tired of it. We want to spend money on other things in this state. You're going to have to get rid of the following 50 things. Or you choose, but you have to get rid of $100 million of operating expenses. Is that a very foreign possibility? You say a legislative response, both of you, and I say, yeah, the legislative response is, dude, you're losing too much money.